Whoa! It really looks like bread.
I have seen people make carnivore bread out of shredded chicken, but to me that just sounds like meatloaf, and I didn't want to go there. So I tried something different instead, and what came out of my air fryer honestly surprised me. It looked like bread, it sliced like bread, and it gave me way more ideas than I expected. Let me show you exactly how I made it, step by step. I started with a small tray, so if you got a bigger one, you can either scale the recipe up or just make multiple batches. For my version, I used 4 eggs, about 100 grams of cottage cheese, around 70 grams of pork rinds, and 70 grams of butter. The butter needs to be melted, so I put that in the air fryer for 4 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius. I started off with the pork rinds, and at first I thought, alright, I'll just crush them one by one. I grabbed my old broken meat hammer and went at it. The sound was satisfying for about 3 seconds. But then reality hit. It was boring. Really boring. And the whole time I kept thinking, there's no way people are doing this for every recipe. I mean, who has the patience to sit there hammering rinds like you're flattening coins at a carnival? If you have seen my other videos, you know this is usually how I do it. Slow, painful, one piece at a time. But in the middle of it, I had this light bulb moment. Why don't I just throw them all in a Ziploc bag and smash them like a champ? Way less drama, way more fun. So I grabbed the bag, dumped all the rinds inside, sealed it up, and started whacking away. Now this felt good. Instead of wasting 10 minutes tapping away at tiny pieces, I was just going full force. Honestly, it turned into a little stress relief session. If you have had a long day, this part of the recipe doubles as therapy. One thing I learned quick: put a chopping board underneath the bag. Otherwise, your counter is going to hate you. And if you live in an apartment, your downstairs neighbors will probably hate you too. But in just a couple of minutes, I had the rinds broken down into fine crumbs. Not powder. You don't want dust, just that nice breadcrumb texture that holds together but still has some crunch. Way faster, way easier, and honestly a lot more fun than the old way. Once the pork rinds were crushed down to that nice breadcrumb texture, I transferred them back into a bowl and set them aside. It's funny, because when you see them all crushed up like that, they already look like a proper flour substitute. If you didn't know, you would think it was just some kind of a weird homemade bread mix. By the time I was done smashing the pork rinds, the butter was perfectly melted and ready to go. And this is the fun part of carnivore cooking. You are using ingredients you already know, but suddenly you are combining them in ways that feel completely new. Now came the part that honestly had me a little nervous: blending everything together. I grabbed my NutriBullet, which at this point already felt too small for the job. You will see what I mean. I started by cracking 4 eggs straight into the cup. Of course, in true fashion, I managed to spill a little on the counter. But hey, if you don't make a mess in the kitchen, are you even cooking? Next I added the cottage cheese, and once those two were in, I gave it a quick blend. The texture turned really smooth, almost like a custard base. And I thought, okay, this might actually work. Then came the pork rinds. In a perfect world, with a bigger blender, you would just dump the whole lot in and let it rip. But my NutriBullet was already looking pretty overloaded, so I only added a bit more than half to start with. I blended that down, then poured in the rest. The thing was really working overtime at this point. Honestly, it sounded kind of angry, like it was protesting, "What have you just fed me?" But slowly it all came together into this really thick batter. It was heavy, and it looked rich. Finally, I grabbed the butter I had melted earlier. Very important tip here: don't add it while it's blazing hot or you will risk scrambling the eggs. I let mine sit for a few minutes to cool down, then poured it in. Gave the whole thing one last blend. And there it was, the final mix. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. At this point I actually started to believe it might bake up like real bread. No, I should say traditional bread. This will be real bread. With the batter ready, the next step was to get my pan sorted. I used a small loaf pan, about 16 by 6 centimeters. And because I don't want to deal with scraping stuck bread later, I lined it with parchment paper. You could also grease it with butter, but honestly parchment just makes life easier. You can lift the whole loaf out cleanly when it's done. Scooping the batter in was kind of satisfying. It was thick, almost heavy, and you could tell it had some structure already from the pork rinds. I took my time spreading it out evenly, pushing it into the corners so it would bake nice and uniform. One important thing here, don't fill it right up to the top. It will rise while it bakes, and if you overfill, you are going to end up with carnivore volcano bread spilling over the sides. I left about a finger's width from the top, and it was just right. I also noticed that the batter clings to the spoon a bit, so it's worth smoothing the surface before you put it in the air fryer. You don't have to make it perfect, but if you press it down lightly and leave it out, the finished loaf will look way better when you pull it out. So by this stage, I had my pan neatly filled, parchment tucked in, batter smoothened, and it actually looked like I was about to bake real bread. That's when it started to get exciting. With the pan ready, it was time for the moment of truth, baking. I preheated my air fryer to a steady 170 degrees Celsius, which is about 340 Fahrenheit. Air fryers tend to run hotter than ovens, so if you usually bake in the oven, keep that in mind. I slid the pan into the basket and set the timer for 30 minutes. Now here's the thing with air fryers. They are all a little different. Mine has an 18 by 18 basket and cooks fairly even, but some run hotter or circulate air faster. If yours is smaller or larger, you might need to adjust the time a little, so don't be afraid to peek in after 25 minutes. When the 30 minutes were up, I carefully lifted the pan out of the air fryer, and the first thing I noticed was the crust. That was already a good sign. That's when I knew I might actually be onto something. But of course, you don't really know until you test the inside. So I grabbed a wooden skewer and poked it straight into the middle. Pulled it out, and it came out clean. That's the magic sign. It means it's cooked through. And I've got to say, that moment was kind of satisfying. You spend the whole time doubting whether it's going to set, whether it's going to rise, and then you see that clean skewer and think, yep, this thing actually worked. To be honest, I had already thought maybe I need to take a little break from this whole carnivore cooking shtick. No. Once I knew it was cooked through, the hardest part of the whole recipe kicked in. Waiting. I set the pan down and forced myself to leave it alone for 20 minutes. That's actually more difficult than it sounds, because when you've got this golden crusty loaf sitting there on the counter, the first instinct is to cut into it right away. But if you do that, the inside is still settling and you risk ending up with slices that fall apart or stick to the knife. And sure enough, after the wait was over, I could lift it out of the pan with the parchment, and it came out in one perfect piece. The crust felt sturdy, the shape held, and it actually looked like a proper loaf of bread. That was the big reveal moment for me. This thing wasn't just a random experiment anymore, it looked legit. And here's my live reaction now. I wanted you to see exactly what I thought as I tried it for the first time.
It does look like bread. I am very curious. It smells nice. Whoa! It really looks like bread. I can kind of smell the pork rind, obviously. But look at it. A little bit mushy. Very interesting. Alright, let's give it a try. To be honest, it tastes a lot different than I imagined. Because I thought that it's gonna really taste like eggs. I mean, yeah, if I added more pork rinds, I think I wouldn't really feel the egg. And I haven't eaten anything today. Yeah, it's very interesting. I do like it. Let me get something to put on it. Okay, so this is for the people who have pointed out my golden fork and golden spoon. Meet the golden knife. Yeah, I took some butter. I took a piece of cheese. Let's see how that... But yeah, I am pleasantly surprised. Like, I'm not somebody who misses bread, because I was not eating so much bread in my day-to-day life. But this is very good. This is gonna be a little bit of a disaster, because the butter was in the fridge. But the bread is still a little bit warm. So, oh yeah, it melts very fast. So let me just do this. Let's add the cheese. Look at this. This is really good. I'm so happy. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be making this more. I just cannot stop looking at it and be surprised at how cool it looks. Don't you think? I mean, it looks cool.
So yeah, for me this recipe was a win. If you are curious, you should definitely try it for yourself and see what you think. And I would love to know what you'd pair it with. Would you make sandwiches? Toast it up with more butter? Maybe use it as side with steak. Drop your ideas in the comments because I think this little experiment has way more potential than I realized.
Yeah, this is my first time making this. ChatGPT said that you can refrigerate it for 4 days, and you can also freeze it. But I think it's best to freeze it in slices than in the whole form. It's very, very cool. Yeah, what can I say? Maybe I will try an intro. Yeah, here we go. Maybe I will try an outro. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a like, comment, and I'll meet you here next time on Meet Carnivore. That's very cool.